Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. Ukrainian drone attacks target Moscow overnight, with Russia saying air defences shoot down several drones and no immediate damage reported in the capital. Debris from a downed drone sparked a fire at an industrial site in the Tula region, as Moscow says more than 170 drones are intercepted across Russia. The US State Department says it will deny visas to 5 people, including a former EU commissioner, accusing them of pressuring American social media platforms to suppress certain viewpoints. The former EU tech chief rejects the claims as a witch hunt. Venezuela tells the UN Security Council that the United States is waging an unofficial war to remove its government and pursue what it calls continental ambitions across Latin America. Caracas warns that it is the first target of a broader strategy. Thailand and Cambodia agree to hold a meeting of defence officials to try to revive a months-old ceasefire, as border fighting enters a third week with at least 80 dead. The US Supreme Court refuses to let President Donald Trump deploy National Guard troops to Chicago. The justices leave in place a lower court order blocking the deployment, while a legal challenge by Illinois and local officials continues. Belgium formally joined South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice, alleging Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The court says Belgium has filed a declaration of intervention in the proceedings. Libya's army chief of staff dies after a private jet crashes following departure from Turkey. The Prime Minister calls it a major loss for both the military and the nation. New South Wales passes sweeping new gun and anti-terror laws in an emergency parliamentary sitting following the Bondi Beach mass shooting. We start this hour in Europe, and Russia has intensified its attacks on Ukraine, targeting military and industrial sites and energy infrastructure using hypersonic missiles and drones. In response, Ukraine has reported a troop withdrawal from the eastern town of Siversk to preserve soldiers' lives and maintain combat capability. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone attacks targeted Moscow overnight, causing a fire at an industrial site in the Tula region. Moscow's air defense reportedly downed 172 Ukrainian drones, but the city's airports were still impacted, limiting operations. Ukraine says these strikes were aimed at disrupting Russia's military and logistics supply chains. Joining us... Okay, of course, this is the ongoing events in the Russia and Ukraine war. Cross-border aerial strikes continue, with drones being the main weapon of choice when it comes to these strikes usually on energy infrastructure that have flown cross-border and sparked a fire in Moscow and hit other energy infrastructure in an already embattled Kyiv. Gautam Mukherjee joins us now. He's a senior journalist and he joins us live from New Delhi. Gautam, thank you very much as always. It's great to talk to you. Your thoughts on how the Russia-Ukraine war is unfolding at this current moment? Of course, we've seen diplomatically developments, but no real motion when it comes to a solidified peace agreement yet. However, on the ground, things do remain very real. Russia claims gains in Ukraine's east, as some believe that Vladimir Putin is vying for leverage when it comes to these talks. What's your analysis of what's going on right now?
I think you're quite right. Russia is seeking leverage. It will continue to take territory. It has made clear that it will retain the territory, particularly in the south and the Donbass region, and increasingly some of the ports, with an eye even as far as Odessa. they wish to retain this for the future. They are quite happy if Ukraine joins the EU, as long as there is no question of it joining the NATO. Um, they are not in favor of other Western European troops being stationed in Ukraine. Um, and it does look like the US is leaning towards the Russian position. And it is a matter of time, I feel, before Ukraine comes around, along with its European allies, to agree to more or less the Russian position. There will be negotiations on the details, but the broad parameters of a possible peace agreement will involve ceding of substantial, almost a third of Ukraine's territory to Russia.
Yes, and of course, Vladimir Putin and his negotiating tactics, apologies, remain unchanged. Still committing that he does want Ukraine to concede territory. Ukraine once again, and the Europeans reiterating that Ukraine does need to decide this on its own. What does this say for the international order per se? If Ukraine were to concede territory after in this peace deal brokered by Donald Trump, if of course it does happen?
I think it doesn't affect the European order as such. This is a consequence of drifting eastwards for the last 30 years and threatening the very doorsteps of Moscow by the Western Alliance and NATO. And this is a situation in which Ukraine will be retained as a buffer state of sorts. It isn't the same Ukraine as was there before the war, but this is the best that can be expected. And Europe, especially the leaders who are opposed to a deal that appears to concede to Russian aggression, will have to come to terms with it. That's I'm talking of Britain, France, and Germany in the main. They are going to have to come to terms with the on the ground position that Russia has taken 1/3 of Ukraine and will not give it back.
Gautam, of course, we're reaching the end of 2025 and this war is approaching its 4th year. But the entire conflict seemed to change momentum when Donald Trump took office in January. We have, of course, seen diplomatic efforts to end the war increase. However, Ukraine continues to lose land on the battlefield. What's your analysis been over Donald Trump's first year in office when it comes to his attempts in ending this war, and how have the dynamics changed?
The meeting in Alaska is the blueprint, and Donald Trump is more or less sticking to it. Zelensky has been trying via his Western allies in Europe to dilute the position that Trump has taken. Trump has not substantially moved from it because he thinks it's the only solution. He is continuing nominally to support Ukraine in its war efforts, but he is not willing to escalate it, and he is not willing to support it indefinitely. So insofar as it goes, the pressure is on Europe to make up the gap, and they are actually, truth be told, not able. The costs of sustaining Ukraine for a prolonged period will tell badly on NATO minus US and the EU as well. So their economies are not doing well enough to do all this. For a while, they were threatening to use frozen Russian assets, but really, while they're substantial, they're not enough to sustain a prolonged war.
Yes, Gautam, do stay with us. Thank you very much for joining us as we move on to our next story. And we move over to the Indo-Pacific, and Chinese authorities have said that 2 Taiwanese citizens led a smuggling operation involving a Chinese crew vessel that damaged subsea cables earlier this year. In June, a Taiwanese court sentenced the Chinese captain of a Togo-registered ship, the Hong Tai 58, to 3 years in jail after finding him guilty of intentionally damaging undersea cables off Taiwan in February. In a case that alarmed officials in Taipei, the Public Security Bureau in Weihai, in China's eastern Shandong province, said its investigation into the incident showed that 2 Taiwanese men were behind a multi-vessel operation that was illegally transporting frozen goods to China. The authorities' findings came after interviewing 7 Chinese crew members on the Hong Tai. China has previously accused Taiwan of manipulating possible Chinese involvement in the case, saying it was making claims before the facts were clear. The Weihai Public Security Bureau issued a bounty of up to $35,500 for information or assistance regarding the Taiwanese suspects, with the surnames Qian and Qian, adding that they have been on a Chinese Customs Office wanted list since 2014. Dr. Satoru Nagao joins us now to discuss this further. Dr. Nagao, apologies. Beijing now claims that 2 Taiwanese citizens led this operation. How credible is that assertion from the Chinese government?
Credible or not is not so important because nationality is not a matter in this case. At least several ships has identified to cut the cable, and one of the ship is a crew as the 7 Chinese, but the owner of this smuggling group is 2 Taiwanese. China is claiming. This means that there is a possibility that China is using the 2 Taiwanese to cut the cable, we can say. So that's why anyway, cutting the cable and isolating the communication of Taiwan is a very exploitable situation for China to persuade Taiwan forcefully to join China. So that's why this situation is a threat of the security in this region. So how to prevent the cutting the cable is a matter. So in this case, the Taiwanese or not is not so important, because if the Chinese finds the agent of Taiwanese agent to cutting the cable, in this case, the on surface nationality is Taiwanese, but the reality is their agent, China's agent. So that's why in this case, China want to say the Taiwanese overestimates the situation, overemphasize China's brutality, but the reality is China is really planning to cut the cable to isolate Taiwan. So that is the reality, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, and how much of this case is about facts on the seabed, and how much is it about shaping public perception in China, Taiwan, and internationally in the region as well?
In this case, China said only one incident is February, but in another case is January, another cutting the cable situation has happened. And so repeatedly it has happened indeed several times per year. But because of the cable itself is located to the seabed, how big damage has happened is that it is not easy to identify. When the internet has cutting or damaging, in this case they can identify. But without this, it looks like this is normal, even if some damage has happened. So repeatedly cutting has happening the cable around Taiwan, and sometimes the Taiwan side identified as damaged. But indeed, there's a high possibility that more fluently, more often China is try to cutting the cable. Success or not is matter, but they try to do. It is clear that because of the at least some has already damaged and Taiwan identified.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here on the programme. And we now move on, and a federal judge has rejected a challenge by the US business lobby group to President Donald Trump's $100,000 fee for the new H-1B visas for highly skilled foreign workers, to which Trump says it fell under his broad powers to regulate immigration. US District Judge Beryl Howell in Washington, D.C. has rejected the arguments by the US Chamber of Commerce that the fee conflicts with federal immigration law and will lead many companies, hospitals and other employees to cut jobs and the services they provide to the public. Gautam Mukherjee joins us once again. Of course, this is an ongoing saga. What do you make of these recent developments coming at us today?
I think Trump is fairly determined not to let too many people in. The ones who already have H-1B visas can renew them. New ones are proving impossible with a $100,000 fee. This will change the topography of many of the IT companies as well as others that need highly skilled workers that are not available on the ground in America. Training in such high-tech areas is not so easy on an overnight basis. It takes long and hard years to come up to that skill level, which is why the US IT industry is fueled very largely by Indian people from the IITs that have gone there over the years. This might play well with his political audience, the MAGA, but it is going to be difficult to substitute workers from the local population in the foreseeable future. However, he's determined to push it through, and the courts seem to be supporting him.
Yes, Gautam Mukherjee, thank you very much. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. We now have some breaking news coming in, and according to an investigative committee, 2 police officers were killed in an overnight explosion in Moscow that occurred when they tried to stop a suspicious person. They mentioned that an explosive device was triggered as the officers approached the suspect, who was near the device vehicle. The blast occurred close to the site where a Russian general was killed earlier this week. Of course, some huge breaking news coming out of Moscow there, another possible assassination. We now move on, and India has successfully launched a heaviest satellite in orbit using the LVM-3 rocket. ISRO's LVM-3 rocket places the 6.5-ton Bluebird Block 2 satellite of US-based Form AST Space MOBI into a 520-kilometre circular orbit. The Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has congratulated ISRO for the new milestone. He has said that it strengthens the foundation for future missions such as Gaganyaan, and the Prime Minister has also said that the success of the heavy lift LVM-3 rocket also reinforces India's growing role in global commercial launch markets. PM Modi has said that the LVM-3 launch was also reflective of efforts towards Okay. And India and congratulated hard-working space scientists and engineers. We're now joined by Dr. B.R. Guru Prasad, a renowned former ISRO scientist and public relations officer and current director of the Jawaharlal Nehru Planetarium in Bangalore. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program. What makes this such a significant day in Indian space travel? How big of a development is this?
Good afternoon to all the viewers. And yes, it is a very significant day for India. And as it was told, it's indeed a milestone because India's heaviest rocket and the most complex and the most capable rocket, LVM-3, which is affectionately dubbed as Bahubali. Okay, it has launched a very heavy satellite. Satellite is not only heavy, 6,500 kilograms. Okay, that is the heaviest launched by LVM-3 so far. It had launched 72 satellites for a UK-based thing earlier, and together in each launch they weighed around 6 tons. This time it is 6.5 tons almost. So it is a very heavy satellite. At the same time, it is a very sophisticated satellite, in fact, because this satellite, Bluebird Block 2 satellite, the first one in that series, it is going to bring cellular broadband data, the facilities to the ordinary mobile phones, that is smart mobile phones, in fact. This is a very significant step. That is as far as the satellite is concerned. But as far as the rocket is concerned, about which we are more worried about, okay, we are concerned about, I'm sorry, is that the launch went picture perfect. It was a textbook launch. And the fact that the satellite was put into an orbit which was barely 1.5 kilometers away from its intended one, that speaks volumes for India's capability and India's skills. And it was told that India has already launched 434 satellites for 34 countries, and many of them are from the United States. And another GSLV rocket a few months back that launched the NISAR satellite, which was built jointly by NASA and ISRO. So Indian launch vehicles have come a long way. And it is very pertinent to remember here on this special day that Indian space program was formally inaugurated on November 21st, 1963, with the launch of a small sounding rocket. Sounding rocket is nothing but a research rocket provided by NASA, and its scientific instrument was from France. But today, December 24th, 2025, from that time in 62 years, we have come a long way. And today we launched an American satellite weighing 6,000, a whooping 6,500 kilograms into an orbit perfectly. So this is indeed a milestone. This is a day to celebrate as far as India is concerned. Yes, all of us have to celebrate.
And yes, and where does India, now stand when it comes to space capabilities? Of course, the United States and China is massively ahead of anyone else. However, where does India now stand when it comes to this?
See, when we talk of space capabilities, we talk of end-to-end capability in satellites and robotic spacecraft and human spaceflight. For example, end-to-end capability in satellite domain means design, development, building, testing, launching a satellite. That is very important. That capability is not easy to acquire, as well as to maintain the satellite in orbit, manage it in orbit, as well as to utilize it effectively. And for that you need launch vehicles for launching the satellites. So in the satellite domain, in the launch vehicle domain, and at the same time, as far as space exploration is concerned, you need robotic spacecraft, and India has already proved its worth in the case of the moon, in the case of Mars, and now it is busy in studying the sun from a vantage point. So in all these three domains, India has excelled. But it has taken up now the human space flight program, the first step of which is Gaganyaan. And the same rocket, LVM-3, is going to launch India's Gaganyaan spacecraft from the Indian soil containing an Indian astronaut, in fact. So 4 astronauts have already been trained, and Shubhanshu Shukla, one of them, already participated as the pilot of Axiom 4 mission successfully. And definitely Gaganyaan adds a new dimension, but it augurs well. Today's successful launch of LVM-3 brings more confidence to Indian scientists, but the rocket it is being human rated. That is, its reliability has been significantly enhanced. So this is where India stands. And when it comes to complex space technology, I told you, end-to-end capability we have in all these things. Only 6 countries we have: United States, Russia, China, Japan, and in Europe, significantly it is France. Okay, Germany, UK, they are there, but France has acquired its own niche in this regard, and of course India. So this is where we stand.
Yes, Dr. Guru Prasad, thank you for bringing so much clarity to that. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for taking the time. We now move on, and Waymo, the self-driving unit of Alphabet, is updating its software after a weekend incident in San Francisco where its robo-taxis stalled during a major power outage. The outage, caused by a fire at a PG&E substation, knocked out power to about 1/3 of the city, affecting 130,000 residents. Videos showed Waymo vehicles struck at intersections as traffic signals went dark. While Waymo's cars are designed to handle dark signals, the outage caused a backlog of requests, contributing to traffic congestion. Waymo says it is refining its protocols to better handle such events and improve emergency responses, and the company resumed its ride handling service on Sunday, but California's Public Utilities Commission is reviewing the situation. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.